Donald Trump on Fox News says that he wants to end the Ukraine war so that he can enter heaven. He even casually admits that there's a good chance that he's going to hell.
You know, if I can save 7,000 people a week from being killed, I think that's a pretty. I want to try and get to heaven if possible. I'm hearing I'm not doing well. I am really at the bottom of the totem pole. But if I can get to heaven, this will be one of the reasons.
Donald Trump knows he's absolutely cooked. Donald Trump says he's at the bottom of the barrel when it comes to being selected into heaven. Guilty conscience much? Donald Trump and Christian Zionists are currently supporting and funding the genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza. Of course they are going to hell. In fact, I believe that Donald Trump is delusional in thinking that there's even a 1% chance that he may be entering heaven. According to your scripture, Jesus said that it's easier for a camel to pass through a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. Meanwhile, Donald Trump believes that the very few rich people that are actually entering heaven are the ones who are supportive of a genocide. Donald Trump is just a typical old man who is now fearing for his soul now that he's closer to the grave. This is what happens when you embrace a life of dishonor and greed.
Welcome to hell, motherfucker!
Russian hackers exposed the insane amount of military losses for Ukraine during their Western-sponsored war against Russia. According to the information leaked from the Ukrainian General Staff databases, 1.7 Ukrainian troops are either dead or missing. Bro, that's an absolutely insane number. This is why we are seeing Ukrainian men being kidnapped off the streets in order to fight and die and become cannon fodder for NATO. All these losses, and for what? Simply because the West couldn't stand Ukraine being a neutral buffer state? Notice how we only got this information because of hacked data? Why is the Western media not interested in the amount of Ukrainians that are dying fighting their war? This comes after months of the Western media trying to sell to their people that Russia has been exposed on the battlefield. For the last 3 years, Western media has been trying to paint a picture that Russia is extremely weak and ineffective, when the exact opposite is true. Ukrainians are being slaughtered. Analyzing the exchange of the dead really exposes just how much Ukrainians are being wiped out with very minimal Russian casualties. Just yesterday, on August 19th, there was an exchange between dead soldiers between Ukraine and Russia, where Russia gave back 1,000 dead Ukrainian soldiers, while Ukraine gave back 19 dead Russian soldiers, a ratio of 1,000 to 12. And when you look at the history of dead soldier swaps, the numbers are quite consistent. Meanwhile, European leaders like Friedrich Merz, Keir Starmer, and Emmanuel Macron has made it 100% clear that they want to fight to the last Ukrainian in a war that cannot be won. But the United States and Europe doesn't care, because the military-industrial complex is seeing record boom in their profits because all the dead Ukrainians. This is exactly why they want this war to keep going as long as possible. Zelensky will go down as a tyrant and one of the most treasonous leaders in modern history, who sacrificed an entire generation of Ukrainian men and destroyed his society by selling out his country to NATO and the West.
What's poppin', my friends? My family, we are back once again. Welcome to Nick at Prime Time. You guys know I'm always in the lab cooking. Even when I'm not live, I got a lot of great content on the channel now. Big shout out to my friend Zoya's Love, Zoya's Life, my friend Greg. Hopefully you guys been enjoying these clips. I gotta refresh the screen. Hope you guys been enjoying the clips that we put on our channel. Hopefully you guys been enjoying this new show I have. We got a lot to dive into today. Friday we have Shama Sawan join us for, I think, our third episode of our official new series. On Friday we're gonna debunk and destroy this recent Jacobin article that was making the strong argument for organizing within the Democratic Party. Anyone who organizes outside of it is just wasting the working class time. So I can't wait to have Sham on so we can debunk that nonsense. But I want to get to the first story first, and this is what we've been covering for quite a long time. And this is why I find the NATO left to be extremely detestable. The Hassan Piker left that will have someone like Matt Duss on their show and never push him on why he supports this batshit crazy NATO proxy war in Ukraine, which has completely destroyed their country. And they have an entire generation of Ukrainian men that was wiped out for what? For what? What is all these what is this death and suffering? What is this war really for? Just so NATO can have access to materials in the Donbass? Because you guys don't want a neutral Ukraine? You must understand, we was always the ones who cared about the Ukrainians. The people like Bernie Sanders, Ro Khanna, I grilled Ro Khanna on our show over this. And like I see Ro Khanna go on quote unquote left independent media. He's never grilled about this. And I exposed his hypocrisy on why he condemns Palestinian resistance, but he wants Ukrainians, he wants to fight to the last Ukrainian in a war they never stood a chance in. And we explained this concept many times before. There's a reason why you are not seeing nonstop coverage of the Ukraine war from NATO left channels. They never talk about it. You never see Bernie Sanders, AOC, any of these people discuss this war because they don't want people to know the result of what they supported. And in order to get people on board for this proxy war, one thing they've been doing for years is pretending that Russia has been exposed as weak and ineffective. They've been pretending that Russia has been losing, and this is why we got to support the Ukrainian cause. Now, it only takes a few seconds to realize why this narrative is absurd. Like, this is just one of many headlines you can find. Russia's battlefield woes in Ukraine. Go ahead, search Russia losing in Ukraine, and you will see all this delusion from Western leaders. That delusion exists because they cannot sell a war without convincing their population that they are winning, that they are strong, and their enemy is weak. It's the same. Many people like to rewrite the Vietnam War and pretend that Americans are naturally caring and they was heartbroken over America's gross violation of Vietnamese sovereignty. And amounts. No. It had nothing to do with like what we was doing to Vietnamese people. Americans turned against that war the second they saw American soldiers come back in body bags. My hero, Muhammad Ali, I know everything about his life. White people hated Muhammad Ali. White people love to change history and pretend that Muhammad Ali was their boy. No, this motherfucker was hated by white people more than they hated Malcolm X. Wonder if I can find a number. I wish I knew what the approval rating for white people, but they hated Ali for refusing the draft. It wasn't until later, once Muhammad Ali was vindicated, that white America woke up and was like, oh, damn, we really fucked up there. It wasn't until they saw soldiers come back in body bags that they realized that Muhammad Ali made the right choice. And this has been a coordinated strategy by the West for decades now to sell this illusion that every single war that we got into that we won, even though the United States haven't won a war in the modern era. They lost every single war ever since World War II. Their goal was to remove communism from the Korean Peninsula, and we still have North Korea. They waged war on terror, and now we got a record amount of terrorism coming from the Zionists, and all the terrorist groups that the West propped up. They replaced the Taliban with the Taliban. They got smoked in Vietnam. They failed to achieve any of their military objectives in Iraq. Over and over and over again, you see the United States lose. You had Donald Trump who took an L to Yemen, couldn't defeat Ansar Allah. Then you have Donald Trump, who were trying to wage war and start a conflict with Iran and realize quickly that they can't accomplish their military objective of getting rid of Iran's nuclear program. So another failure is failure on top of failure on top of failure by the United States military. But why do people believe it's the exact opposite? Like, if you was to ask the random American, most Americans believe that we're the most elite, strong, badass fighting force of all time. They don't know that guerrilla warfare exists. They don't understand that it's more than just big guns that win wars. It's whether you are accomplishing your military goal. And that's because of decades of nonstop government pro-military propaganda. This is because of Call of Duty and all these pro-war propaganda mechanisms via movies, video games, TV shows to convince people that the United States cannot be fucked with. So if we create a scenario where people believe that we will always win, it makes people more likely to support war. Now, will people be more likely to support war when they realize that Ukraine has been absolutely washed on the battlefield? How Ukraine has been checkmated since the beginning of this war? Another geopolitical objective of Biden and Donald Trump, and I shouldn't say names because it's an overall shared ambition by the ruling class, was to separate Russia from China, was to separate Russia from India. Russia and India is closer than ever now. India and China has came to agreements on security disagreements that they have for years, came closer together. A new axis of resistance has formed because of failed United States policy. Failed United States policy after failed United States policy. And the people who think they're the patriots are the people who think they're are the ones who cheerlead for failed foreign policy. That's the toxic form of patriotism that comes from capitalist class brain rot. In communist societies, what we look at and what makes us patriotic, we want to see our country build. I want to see my people thrive. I want to see life expectancy rates go up, which has been declining in the United States. I want to see the homeless population disappear. It's rampant. I want to see this diseases of despair completely disappear. It's at an all-time high. I'm not a big fan of flag pumping. I think all that stuff is nonsense. But the right-wing capitalist brainwashed version of patriotism, which is the standard belief, is the toxic ideology that you root for the criminal ruling class. You're a patriot if you was rooting for the United States against Russia. Those are people who think they're patriots. People who think they're patriots are the people who want the United States to seize Taiwan for China. That's their version of patriotism. The John Bolton style of patriotism. They can see American cities rot. They can see Americans can't cope without antidepressants. They can see just the quality of life for American people falling, but they don't give a damn. People like Mike Pence don't give a damn. He even said that the state of American cities are not his concern. You got to see how there's this barbaric form of patriotism. And there are many people who say that I'm a traitor to the United States because I unapologetically want to see a close relationship with the United States and Russia. In this situation where we have no conflict, where we have amazing trade, where we are engaged in a way that spans all of our economies, that benefits not only the Russian people, that benefits the American people. The ruling class convinced people that we have to have conflict with other people at all times because it benefits them. It leads to a boost of the military-industrial complex. The same military-industrial complex that would then donate to their campaign, who then buy ads, overcharge for ads on corporate media to keep them pro-war. And then Americans are brainwashed to thinking that cheerleading these wars and hating Russia is what it means to be pro-American. The most pro-American position is the position that we want peace. That we don't want our country to violate international law. Imagine living in a country where you are the global peace seeker in the world. That's why I view to be the most patriotic and admirable position. But meanwhile, they'll call you a Russian bot if you say that out loud. They will claim that you are repeating Putin talking points because you want to stop the suffering of the Ukrainians. Let me finally get to this here. Lindsey Graham and these people say all the time, Mark Rutte, Emmanuel Macron, Keir Starmer, Georgia Maloney, they always say that, man, we are in it to the last Ukrainian. We are here to fight to the last Ukrainian. And then they are pretending that this war is a draw. There are people still pretending to this day, Zoya, that Russia is losing this conflict against a country that is much smaller than them, full of recruits that are full of senior citizens, young people that are being dragged out of the streets instead of professionals. The idea that you will ever believe that Ukraine will defeat a country like Russia, the country that defeated the Nazis. It is their culture to smack Nazis in the mouth. That is what they excel at. And that is exactly what's happening here. And for all the people that are saying that there's these massive Russian casualties, you guys know that we track the exchange rates of fallen soldiers, right? And we have Ukraine, just like Israel, what they would do, they will hide casualty numbers. Just like the idea, because it's all about propaganda. And I'm not going to pretend other countries probably don't do that. I'm just speaking about what I know. You know what I mean? I'm speaking about the governments I know. They hide their casualty reports. And there was Russian hackers, and this is why I was playing in my hotspot, that showed there's 1.7 million dead Ukrainian soldiers. And this is obvious if you're just like kind of observing the war, because if things was going so great for Ukrainian troops, why would they need to kidnap Ukrainians, random Ukrainian men off the streets? Why do they keep talking about a manpower problem? And Ukrainians are realizing that they're being used as cannon fodder for the NATO war machine. So you guys realize there was an exchange between dead Russian soldiers and dead Ukrainian soldiers just yesterday, August 19th, where Russia handed over 1,000 dead Ukrainian soldiers. You want to know how many Russian soldiers that Ukraine handed over to Russia? 19. A ratio of 1,000 to 19, my friends. And yet people still, on corporate media, they still pretend that this is a close conflict. Liberals like Mario in the Fall, there was a viral clip that went around that shows the results of Western media brainwashing, because we look at these propaganda reports. I have one to show you guys today. We do so many of these propaganda reports, and we laugh at them. It's easy for us to debut them. And sometimes you guys be like, come on, Nick. No one's dumb enough to fall for this. Well, I see in your guys' comments every once in a while. You guys be like, Nick, no one's dumb enough to fall for this stuff. Why are you so obsessed over this? Over debunking corporate media propaganda? That is not true. I literally see and I catch, especially the NATO left. Like I will catch Majority Report. I will catch Hassan Piker. I will catch all these people in 4K repeating talking points I just saw on MSNBC. I will see Marianne Williamson repeating shit I just saw on MSNBC. I will see Ro Khanna repeating shit I just saw on CNN. Where do you guys think that Marianne Williamson is getting her information from? What do you guys think this guy Mario, who has a pretty big show on X, we're seeing it now. I don't know how many followers this guy have. Did he tag him? He's a pretty big account. But look at this is the nonsense that spread, and why people believe that there's this large amount of Russian casualties. And Douglas McGregor completely slaps it down.
We're seeing advancements on the Russian side, especially in the
Let me know if you guys can
weeks,
hear
but
it.
they've been relatively minimal. We're seeing advancements on the Russian side, especially in the recent weeks, but they've been relatively minimal. There's, one could say, a stalemate there. Both sides are losing a lot of men, a lot of equipment.
All nonsense, Mario. Stop wasting my time. Stop lying to your audience. That's bullshit. Okay. The Russian losses have dropped to single digits. Think about that. 60, 90 days ago, they were double digits. Ukrainian losses are continuously horrific. So this is a nonsense that people are repeating on their way into this discussion with the Russians up in Alaska. You have no chance of coming to any sort of reasonable outcome when you have distortions on the strategic level of the kind that you've just outlined. That's absolutely false, completely wrong. Now, you're free to believe it, but I'm not going to sit here and listen to that nonsense because it's just not true. Now, you want to know what's going to happen? If Donald Trump walks into this meeting with the distorted view that you have just outlined, nothing happens. Absolutely nothing happens. And I don't think Donald Trump privately believes anything that you've just said. I think he knows the truth.
Now, and Douglas McGregor is 100% right in the fact that these peace talks are dead on arrival. Only thing I will say to Douglas is I want him to realize that Donald Trump is playing along, because Donald Trump and I seen there's a segment with General Keane from Fox News where they're saying Trump has Putin back against the wall. Like, the right wing is pretending that Trump has the upper hand over Putin right now. The only reason why you would even believe that, if you believe that Russia is being pressed on the battlefield and there's a standstill, if you acknowledge the reality, you would know how deeply unserious the European leaders are actually about peace, because they think that Russia has to concede any of their points when they don't. Not only do they have the massive approval of their own people, Putin has around an 80%, 85% approval rating. The vast majority of the Russian people support this war. Not only that, he can just stall for time. There is minimal Russian casualties. If anything, this war is now boosting the Russian economy because now their military-industrial complex is in full-fledged. So one of the stated objectives by Europeans and by the Biden administration particularly is that we're going to wage this war in Ukraine, and it's important for you to support the war in Ukraine because this is a way for us to weaken the Russian military. This is a way for we can weaken the Russian state. That is the exact opposite of what happened. The result of this war is what led to the Russian military-industrial complex firing on all cylinders now, because they now see this threat by NATO in the West. And how can Russia possibly seek peace and pursue peace with these leaders who are absolutely delusional? Like, they go on TV, and I catch them in lives all the time in 5K. Here's another crazy delusional one. Trump says all the time that, hey man, Putin better pursue peace because he's losing 1 million Russian soldiers. The same with Macron saying that Russia only captured less than 1% of Ukrainian territory.
And if you take the situation between November 2022 and now, more than 1,000 days of war, the Russian army took less than 1% of the Ukrainian territory. So I want everybody listening to us and watching your program to be aware of the fact that the Russians, they are not performing well there.
Delusional.
3.5 years ago, they launched a special operations which was supposed to last 3 weeks. And if you take the situation between November 2022 and now, more than 1,000 days of war, the Russian army took less than 1%.
Just straight up lies. I'm gonna show you guys this as well, because this is the great post by DDG. Why are Western leaders selling this idea that they are winning this war? Here's the correct. Here's the receipt, I should say. Ukraine's military losses exposed 1.7 million dead and missing, and this is because of Russian hackers who hacked the Ukrainian General Staff database, revealing the catastrophic losses for Ukraine. And here are the numbers by year. This is the information they got. The first year of the war was 100,000, and ever since then, it only got worse. This is where Zelensky should have took the peace deal, but Boris Johnson killed it. So now we got 1.7 million dead Ukrainians since then, 400,000 dead in 2023, almost 600,000, 95,000 in 2024, 621,000 in 2025. Now this is the worst year yet. You guys see all this escalating, how Russia is slowly escalating their offensive. So why would Western leaders still present the idea that they are winning this conflict despite the massive amount of Ukrainian casualties, how much they are suffering? Their economy is suffering. UK is seeing record amount of inflation. They have energy prices that are through the roof. You have countless European leaders that have lost their position because of their support of the Ukraine war. So they are losing politically. Their economy is in shambles. Their people are suffering. There seems to be zero benefit for why the West is so gung-ho to support this conflict to the end, until you realize what is the objective of war. Whenever you see corporate media or people who are part of the two-party duopoly, they will pretend, and Ro Khanna said this on RBN, when he was like, Nick, you don't believe the United States actually engages in war for good reason sometimes? There are people who believe that the United States is supporting the war in Ukraine to defend democracy, to defend the sovereignty of nations. No, there is no such thing as successful war. It's never ending profitable war. The whole point of the Ukraine war was for them to rejuvenate and modernize their military stockpiles. And it gave them an opportunity to test weapons and new technologies that they never had a chance to try in war. That's why you had military officials that explain how the Ukraine war is a massive opportunity for us, because not only do we get to get rid of our old stockpiles, we get to test and create new battlefield innovations. Look, there's so many stories you can find. The corporate media talks about this all the time. In fact, I see so many stories from the weapon manufacturer sponsored corporate media where they report on this and they don't even realize why it's a bad thing. It's almost like they are doing an ad for weapon manufacturers. Look, Ukraine offers its front line as test bed for foreign weapons. So you guys know how the duopoly have like different ways to sell war to the duopoly and their supporters. With liberals, they already have Russia derangement syndrome. They want to see Russia lose because they denied their Queen Hillary Clinton her right to have her dream job and ultimate power. You don't have to convince a liberal to support the war that much. They already have a burning hatred towards Putin. They don't care how many people have to die. Nigga, everyone can die as long as it will weaken Russia. That is a position of AOC, Bernie Sanders. That's the Nancy Pelosi position, the Democrat position. But meanwhile, when you listen to Lindsey Graham, if you guys listen to Marco Rubio before the Trump administration, when he was speaking more openly about this, when you listen to Tom Cotton, when you listen to all the hardcore pro-NATO right-wingers, the way they sell their war is not via humanitarian. I've seen them say this all the time. Well, is it, don't you know that we are creating a stronger military because of Ukraine? Don't you know that our taxpayer money is not actually going to Ukraine? They are actually purchasing weapons from us, and we are actually benefiting for this. This is actually benefiting the military industrial complex. We are now renovating. They explain to their own people that this is all about expanding the power of the military. Meanwhile, people like Ro Khanna don't understand this. I showed Ro Khanna a clip of Lindsey Graham saying that this war is all about weapon manufacture and defense profits, and they still refuse to accept it. me get some drink. Woo! All right, 30 minutes in. We spinning. I still got a little bit more to cover though. Woo, pretty hard to rant 30 minutes straight, man. But let's continue. And as I said in my hotspot video, Zelensky will go down as one of the most treasonous. I was about to say incompetent, but that's not the right word for it. It had nothing to do with competency. He is taking orders from Europe. He is following orders from NATO, from the Boris Johnson UK, Russia phobia, Keir Starmer. That he's listened to Europe, and he openly offered his country to BlackRock, openly offered his country to the military-industrial complex. Meanwhile, you will see the liberal class, and I think it was Michael McFaul, like all these people were saying how Zelensky deserves a peace prize, how he's one of the greatest leaders in modern times. Like, if you guys hear what liberals say about Zelensky, it will make you vomit. Meanwhile, he's one of the most evil, malicious leaders of our time who was willing to destroy an entire generation of his own people just so he can maintain power, just so he don't have to hold elections. This is the same man who sided with Nazis and supported their shelling of ethnic Russians in the Donbass. He is a Jew that is siding with Nazis. Another example of that happening, by the way. So as his country has been destroyed, as it's clear that he has no chance of winning, as NATO continued to dangle NATO membership just to provoke Russia, they're using the entire country as Ukraine as bait, and Zelensky is going along with it. And you know that Zelensky is not serious because one of the demands that Zelensky has labeled that he put on, let me show you guys the receipt on this. One of the demands he said, Crimea is absolutely not on the table for us. He said we will never, ever give a Crimea. And this is what Trump been publicly trying to pressure Zelensky, because you know he's not serious when he says he want to give up, or he refused to give up Crimea, which is already Russian territory. Which Crimea, they want to be part of Russia. They made that 100% clear. But so you don't want to end the war unless Russia give up Crimea? So here Trump convincing the media why this is a horrific idea.
Talks about that. If I gave up that land, I'd be on the front page of every paper for the next 20 years. When Obama gave it up, they don't even talk about it. Talks about.
This is the excuse that you hear people on the right say all the time. It's Cope from the Empire that, oh, it was just Obama's weakness which lost Crimea, fam. If Obama did anything about what happened at Crimea, there would have been World War III. And they know it. It's a disingenuous attack. It didn't have nothing to do with defending Obama. I'm just explaining how they completely rewrote history. I explained this on my last stream, but I want to show you guys a receipt because it's wild how Western media used to cover Ukraine before the invasion, or even 6 months before the invasion, because they knew this shit about pop off and they immediately started changing their coverage. You had Ro Khanna, for example, who advocated for a resolution that would have prevented the U.S. Congress from sending weapons to the Banderite Nazis in Ukraine, because Ro Khanna was saying there is no scenario where we should ever fund Nazis in Ukraine. Fast forward to today. Now he denies Nazi presence in Ukraine. Now the entirety of the establishment denies Nazi presence in Ukraine. And now the entirety of the Western media pretends that Russia waged this violent campaign and seized Crimea with the force in their military, instead of Crimea having a referendum where they overwhelmingly voted to be part of Russia, where even the Ukrainian stationed military at Crimea laid down their arms and allowed Russia to come in and take their territory because they want to be part of Russia that much. So what the imperialists want, what the NATO left want, is they want to force a gun to Crimea's head and force them to be part of the fascist Ukrainian regime that bans collective bargaining. So if you're wondering why people in Crimea wants to be part of Russia instead of Ukraine, it's because Ukraine is, I'm not exaggerating this, is a fascist state. Why would anyone want to be part of a fascist state? This is why ethnic Russians in the Donbass voted for a referendum to become an independent state with close ties to Russia. Because why would anyone want to be part of a state that bans opposition parties, that ban opposition media, that ban the right to collective bargaining, that ban unions? These are things that the Nazi Zelensky regime has done. But despite the fact that he has done this, the entirety of the NATO left is still in denial. AOC, and I'm sure all these motherfuckers, they support a regime that is anti-labor. So when we say that Ukraine is Nazi, it's not because they're Nazi insignias, which is enough, don't get me wrong. But what did the Nazis do when they took power? The first people they went after before the Jews was communists and union organizers. The first thing that the Nazi party did in Germany was banning the right of collective bargaining. Because fascism, despite what liberals don't have a definition of fascism. It is state-sponsored class warfare against the working class. And you do this by merging the corporation and the state. So people just say fascism is the merging of the corporation and the state. But why is the state merging with corporations? Most Westerners have no idea what the fuck fascism is. And this is why communists like myself, we are the national enemies of fascists. Because we are about liberating the working class. We are about having systemic class war that destroys the rich, that targets the rich. Fascism is the exact opposite. It is state-mandated class war of the working class, where the state and corporation merge and they create a totalitarian state where any working class movement is suppressed. And that is exactly what happened in Ukraine, and that is exactly what has been happening in the West. Meanwhile, the anti-fascist vanguard on the global stage is who? Communist China. Russia, who fight against these fascists, these Nazis. So, sorry, let me get to this article. I went on a random rant here. Not a random rant. I'm explaining why people in Crimea wanted to support Russia. And when I explain to you guys, isn't it obvious? Russia, a country where they offer paid maternity leave. Ukraine, a fascist state with no collective bargaining rights. Russia do have work to do on unions, but they don't ban collective bargaining rights. They have strong labor protections. The exact opposite of what we see in Ukraine. They have many of the reforms that came from Soviet Union Russia still applies to Russia today, which is one of the reasons why they got free healthcare. So this is the reason why. So this is the article. Sorry, let me refocus. I was explaining how the West, the way they used to talk about Ukraine, will blow your mind. And if you just start following politics in 2022, you will be amazed on how the West used to expose Banderite Nazis in Ukraine. There was a BBC article and documentary that came out in 2015, and they were explaining the rise of neo-Nazis in Western Ukraine and how there are a bunch of ethnic Russians that consider themselves pro-Russia. That was a documentary on the BBC. Zoya, we should dig that up. Maybe I should show it to show you guys how crazy the difference in coverage is. Because look at the date of this article. This is 2014. This is CNN reporting on what we see in Crimea. And even then, when I was skimming this article, even when you skim this article, they're still hiding nuggets of truth. But they will in this article, you see them mention things they will never mention before, how there's a split. In this article, they mention how there's a split between Western and Eastern Ukraine, and how there's ethnic Russians in Eastern Ukraine that are being suppressed by the West. You will never see this stuff in CNN articles now. I'm going to read a little bit of it. Amid the chaos in Ukraine, an odd standoff played off on Sunday at one military base on the country's Crimea Peninsula. Several hundred men wearing dark green camouflage uniforms without insignia surrounded Ukraine's. There was this military base near the Crimea capital, Sepharopol, believe that is. But rather than the tense scene, this is the important part here. Rather than the tense scene, one might expect, with two forces facing off, the men who were on foot in a dozen or so vehicles walked peacefully near 15 Ukrainian soldiers standing guard near the base. So you guys see, do you understand what they're actually reporting, but they're trying to hide? There's a lot of weasel words in these two paragraphs here to explain how these Russian soldiers, who they describe as invading Ukraine, was actually extremely friendly to these Ukrainian military soldiers who was occupying Crimea. And they pretty much explain how. Actually, let me read this part. That mood continued, the mood of them getting along, continued amid crowds of civilians who were there to voice their opinions about the chaos that has enveloped Ukraine in recent months. You guys see how they used to talk about the Ukrainian Civil War? This Ukrainian Civil War has been completely wiped out of Western consciousness. These people are now pretending that this conflict started in 2022. This is why everyone repeats unprovoked Russian invasion. Why do you guys think they're telling you that? Because it's the exact opposite. This is Russia getting involved in the Ukrainian Civil War, where the fascist militias were killing, torturing, and executing ethnic Russians. And to me, I think that's 100% reasonable, because I explain as a communist, as an anti-fascist, if there was Nazis in Mexico that was killing Black Americans, that was killing Americans, period. I should say that. If there was Nazis in Mexico that were killing Americans, I would 100% support snuffing those motherfuckers out. Are you serious? The principal position is punching a Nazi and preventing them from forming political power. So what the West criticized Russia is doing is the same thing that they did when the United States entered World War II. Now they are backing the Nazis. So this is Russia getting involved in the Ukrainian Civil War, which people in the Donbass wanted to do. They actually, and Zoya explained this to me, there was a lot of people in the Donbass, there were a lot of ethnic Russians in Odessa who was critical of Vladimir Putin for doing nothing as the Ukrainian government was shelling and killing their people. They were saying, how can you stand back as Nazis are slaughtering Russians? Aren't you embarrassed? It's supposed to be the Russian culture. It's supposed to be part of our society to defend our people against Nazis. So this was frustrations that were going on in eastern Ukraine forever. So they explain how Viktor Yanukovych was ousted by the CIA-backed coup, which was started by Lindsey Graham and John McCain in the CIA. You had John McCain, who led a rally with Banderite Ukrainians and telling them to take the country. And before I continue, I want you guys to ask yourself this question here. Why aren't you getting this information from the NATO left? I mean, like the Bernie media industrial complex who support this war. It's because they want to keep people dumb and uninformed about the truth of this conflict. So the West teamed up with Nazis in Ukraine to overthrow the democratically elected Viktor Yanukovych. And you guys think Russia will be okay with that? Can you imagine? Can you imagine if the Chinese Communist Party openly was funding Nazis in Mexico or whatever in Mexico, was killing Americans? Do you guys think the United States will ever be okay with this? They started the Cuban Missile Crisis. They almost nuked the entirety of the planet because Russia and Soviet and Cuban ties. They laid tariffs. They have laid sanctions, and they are waging war against countries and they are pledging war against countries for having simple ties with Russia. They are destroying the relationship between India and the United States because India is having closer ties with Russia. They do the same thing all the time. So, of course, Russia would see the situation and think it's extremely problematic to have Nazi insurgencies ramping up at their border. Now, sorry, I need to shut up. Let me continue the article. Now, this is one of the few times where you will see the media explain the dynamic of Ukraine. There has been a deepening schism in the country ever since the overthrow of Yanukovych, between those in the West who generally support the interim government. So Western Ukrainians, as they're explaining, these are the fascists who teamed with the CIA, who supported the overthrow of their democratically elected government. And then you had those in the East who preferred a Ukraine where Jesus Christ. Look how CNN describes the Eastern Ukrainians who didn't want to be part of this fascist government who overthrew Yanukovych. They said they prefer a Ukraine where Russia cast a long shadow. That's one hell of a way to say there's a lot of Ukrainians who support Russia. Y'all see the snarkiness even in this article? There's Eastern Ukrainians who want Ukraine where Russia casts a long shadow. So this is them acknowledging this long-standing tension in Ukraine. Now this history has been completely erased. Now you will see people say, what do you mean Ukraine started the war? Don't you know Russia invaded? Russia invaded unpromptly. Russia started this war. I don't know anything about history. All right, so I think we can wrap up here. I'm gonna get to the Venezuela story here. Yeah, let's cover the Venezuela story. Love it. Let me go to super chat first. Let me get this pull a few receipts up. We uncover Venezuela. Trump and MAGA people still pretend that Trump is the pro-peace candidate. Now he's just openly threatening the invasion of Venezuela, making up all these excuses why. They're pretending it has to do with the drug crisis. Because God forbid Americans ever take accountability for their own drug problem. I explained this many times before. They blame Canada. Why do Americans blame Canada for the fentanyl problem? They blame China for the fentanyl problem. They say, don't you know that fentanyl comes from China? And that's why we have a fentanyl problem? Okay. Why don't they have a fentanyl problem in China then? If the reason why Americans are addicted to drugs is because the drug cartels in Mexico, why isn't there a massive drug problem in Mexico? It's because the United States fuels the drug cartels. It's because the United States culture creates diseases of despair and give people nothing to live for. When they have to live on antidepressants, they have to pop drugs just to get by because they have there's no grand vision for what American life is supposed to be for. In China, they are excited about the future. And they are excited about the future because they are helping their country build. There's a national unity behind every single Chinese person because they went through the century of humiliation. That's what China calls it, where they was colonized by Japan, where the economy was in shambles, the massive famines that they went through because of what Japan and what the West did to them. They call it the century of humiliation. I think I talked about it with Carl Zha on China, on a China show before. So China, they take a lot of pride that they came from that. They came from the era of the Nanjing massacre. They came from an era where they was one of the most impoverished countries in the world. And now they are a global superpower where they take pride in uplifting the working class out of poverty. They take pride in the fact that 80% of millennials own their homes in China. You see how they have a grand vision? You guys see how they have these giant 5-year infrastructure projects, and that gives their people a sense of natural dignity? That's why they are hopeful for the future. There are so many polls where Chinese people are saying they're extremely excited about the future compared to the West. Compared to the United States, where people have a dreadful outlook towards the future. Why do you guys think in the United States there are always these doomsday conspiracy theories? Why do you guys think in the United States they always believe that the world is ending, that our society is collapsing? There is no optimism in the American people. Meanwhile, in China and communist countries, you create this optimism by having a shared grand vision. This is what the individualist capitalists, they can't stand this idea. What do you mean? We're supposed to be united behind a universal grand idea? We're supposed to be united behind profit. Help me get profit. The only thing that matters is profit. In this system, where the only thing that matters is profit, and what leads to these diseases of despair, where these workers are told every single day that their fucking work doesn't matter. They get screwed. They get wage theft. They are victims of wage theft, I should say. And then they are told by the rich that, hey, man, you deserve to get your wage stolen by the capitalist class because you have a low-skilled job. Your job is low-skilled. So we know we shouldn't pay you. Even though you're a teacher, even though you're a construction worker, even if you put hard work, even if you're a quote-unquote burger flipper, you have a very important role for society. Because as a burger flipper, what you are doing is providing energy for our society. People who are working 12 hours a day, people who are in construction, who don't have time to cook on site, what do? So since you are building something and you don't have time to go home, what do you do if you are in construction, for example? You go to a McDonald's. You go to a place full of burger flippers, and they feed the population, which leads to increased production. So the argument that comments are making that even a burger flipper should have value and pride in their work, that even the burger flipper is an extremely important part of this cognitive machine that create a helpful and healthy society. But capitalists, they don't believe this. They believe that the burger flipper should be destined to be in poverty. They believe he is scum that should be living on the streets. Meanwhile, people are wondering why Americans can't survive without antidepressants. Meanwhile, while Americans been obsessed with drinking the bottle and getting liver disease. There is no shared vision. There is no unified goal for our society. Which is unified. This is one of the reasons why I got into communism, when I realized this critique. Sorry, the entire reason I went on this rant is I'm explaining why Americans have to, and why they're a giant market for drugs, while China is not. And China has a history of being poisoned by opium. But they reject it now. They don't have to do that now. They got shared overall vision. Meanwhile, America is a country for druggies who only do it because that's the way they cope. So I find it pathetic that many Americans always blame every other fucking country for the drug problem except themselves. Which is leading to this segment. Here's Caroline Leavitt announcing that they plan to take immediate action to take out Maduro, and they say they are doing it to halt the flow of drugs. And if you believe that, you are a fool of the highest degree.
3DS warships that are being sent to Venezuela, and there's 4,000 Marines on board. Are you looking at possibility of boots on the ground there? What I will say with respect to Venezuela, President Trump has been very clear and consistent. He's prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into our country and to bring those responsible to justice. The Maduro regime is not the legitimate government of Venezuela. It is a narco-terror cartel. In Maduro, it is the view of this administration, is not a legitimate president. He is a fugitive head of this cartel who has been indicted in the United States for trafficking drugs into the country. And with that, I will leave you all, and we will see you later, if not tomorrow. And I look forward to taking more of your questions.
If you guys think this has anything to do with any of that fucking nonsense that she just told you, you are out of your minds. Maybe it has to do with the fact that Venezuela has the largest oil reserves. For anyone who pretends that has anything other to do than that, you are a child. Maybe it's because Nicolas Maduro told Jewish people that they need to take up arms against the Israeli state. Because Maduro had a speech where he explained he comes from Semitic backgrounds. So he called for all Semitic people. He called for Jewish people to take up arms against the Israeli state that is bastardizing Judaism. So people get upset when I call out the current state of Judaism. But hey, man, no one stopped you. No one forced you guys to align yourself with the fascist apartheid Ashkenazis in Europe who had this dream of Zionism. No one forced you to do this. And if you want to reclaim your religion, because technically it's not too late, I don't think it's going to happen. But what Nicolas Maduro said, I can't get ahead of myself here. He called for all Jewish people to take up arms and kill Netanyahu. So not only do they have the largest oil reserves, they are a principally anti-Zionist state, and they have been since the era of Hugo Chavez. They unequivocally stand with the Palestinian resistance, unlike people who like Lula. Like Lula is way better on this issue than many Western leaders, but even people like Lula will say, "Oh, we can't support Hamas and terrorism." Maduro, like, nah, bro. Palestinians had the right to arm self-defense. The same with China. What if I can find that? Self-defense. China said many times before that Palestinians have the right to arm defense. Oh, look at this article. Israel says China's support for Palestinian right of defense may be seen as support for October 7th style attacks. They're not wrong. For politic reasons, China would never say they endorsed the October 7th attacks. But they say all the time, we believe that Palestinians have the right to defend themselves and take up arms against the criminal occupier known as Israel. Meanwhile, what are Arab countries doing? Arab countries are telling Hamas that they should lay down their arms. Meanwhile, I see leftists that annoy me. They're like, why don't China do more for the Palestinians? Because Zionism is a Western problem. That's the weakness of the Western. Have you guys ever heard people say this? They said, why don't China do more for Palestine? Now, to be clear, before I continue with this argument, if you are a Palestinian and you're cursing the world for not doing enough for you, I will never be mad at you. If you're a Palestinian cursing everyone in the world, that's okay. But what I see DSA Western leftists that say China is not a good country because why they're not doing anything to support the genocide. Don't you know that they trade microwaves with Israel and air fryers with Israel? Now, that's not ideal, and I do criticize China for maintaining trade with Israel. But do you guys understand that Zionism is a Western problem? The goal of the Chinese Communist movement is to uplift Chinese people and uphold anti-imperialist principles. So if you have a Zionist project in the West, they're not going to sacrifice the quality of life for their people to solve the problem of the West, especially when you have Arab countries who won't do it. You have Americans who fund Zionism who won't do this. So you have Americans who won't make any sacrifice. You have Arab countries supporting Israel. But people criticize China for not doing enough. And this is another reason why the Western left fucking sucks. This is why the Western left is incompetent. Because the Western left is always looking for saviors. Why won't China save us? Why won't China bail us out? Because we are unable to. No, it's our job, my friends. China supports a Palestinian state without condemning Palestinian resistance. And once again, I'm not mad, and I really do want to emphasize this. I'm really not mad at Palestinians who curse everyone. You know what I mean? It just annoys me when Western leftists who don't do shit to stop Zionism in the West think they have the right to fucking critique China, a country that has nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? So Nicolas Maduro, not only do they have the largest oil reserves, they have been a staunch ally to Palestinian people. Jesus Christ, CNN article is fucking disgusting. Look, what is this? I'm trying to get the headline up. They got ads everywhere. This is why people don't. That's why people don't fucking read this shit. This is the headline where Trump is threatening military action. Where's the fucking oh fuck? Hope I have it saved. Oh shit! I don't think I saved it. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Maduro, shit. I shared it before. I'm trying to see if I can find fucking that article where Maduro says, "God damn it, where did I put it? Hold on, 1 second. Damn it, where did I put that article at? I tried to show you guys an article where they labeled Maduro as an anti-Semite because he said he want people to take arms. I gotta find it. God damn it. But either way, that's his anti-Zionism and the fact that Venezuela has the largest oil reserves. That's the true reason why they're waging this conflict. And here is Claudia Sheinbaum, once again slapping down the talking points of the West, where they were saying that Venezuela is a narco government tied to the cartels. And meanwhile, Mexico, like, bro, there is no evidence of this. Mexico has no evidence linking Venezuela's Maduro to drug cartels. Let me check my email. I'm very mad I can't find that damn receipt. Fuck. Oh, well, I lost it. I should have saved it. So essentially, here we go again. Another attempt by the West to overthrow Venezuela, and they literally admit all the time that it's for the oil. Look at the countries with the largest oil reserves. You had Donald Trump that literally admitted that the reason why he wanted to overthrow and destabilize Venezuela, and so they can take the oil.
Venezuela. When I left, how about we're buying oil from Venezuela? When I left, Venezuela was ready to collapse. We would have taken it over. We would have gotten all that oil. It would have been right next door. How about we're buying?
This is why the establishment didn't prefer Trump, because he's an amateur. You guys see how he just says the quiet part out loud? It had nothing to do with democracy. Oh, I found it. Here it is. So it's about the oil, which they admit. John Bolton admitted that he destabilized Venezuela for the oil. So these are two very, very important reasons. So you have the oil, but most importantly, you have to remember the United States and Israel is one entity. It is the United States and Israel are united as one as an empire. Not that Israel hijacked American society, it's that they are one of the same. So when you had Nicolas Maduro, who was aggressive in calling out the Israeli government and the fact that Venezuela has always been a staunch ally, you have this. Look, Venezuela, this is from the ADL, I believe. Venezuela government fuels incendiary anti-Israel and anti-Semitic environment. So Nicolas Maduro in the entire country of Venezuela is anti-Semite. This is why they're about to invade the country, by the way. And the last bullet point, I know it's hard to read it, but the very last bullet point, I'm going to skip ahead. Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro has called on the Venezuelan Jewish community to publicly support the government hostile line towards Israel and urged them to condemn this Jewish state's military actions in Gaza. Such comments legitimize anti-Jewish stereotypes of Jewish disloyalty and reinforced prejudice beliefs about Jews. They're just making up shit. He called for anyone who actually cares about maintaining Semitic culture to do whatever they can to stop the state of Israel. Another reason why they will never forgive him. And they will never forgive him because he didn't allow them to overthrow their country. Their CIA coup failed over and over again. But here we go again. But they were ready to go. Here's another one. Maduro called Netanyahu the 21st century Hitler. So I think we can wrap up there. I want to keep this one to an hour. On Friday we will have Shama Swan. So you already know the Friday show with Shama is going to be a complete banger. We're going to dismantle the recent Jacobin article and the openly stated DSA strategy of infiltrating the Democratic Party, why that's a failure. There's a lot to cover. There's going to be a lot coming on Friday, so I'll be back. I'm always in the lab cooking, as you guys know. Appreciate the super chat. Thank you for a $5 Joseph, Anas, Al Sharif, and Catman outside of Houston Israeli consulate. Police arrest 27. Nice. I appreciate that breaking news. I appreciate the super chat. But anyway, I'll be back on Friday. The streak continues, man. I'm a little bit tired tonight. I'm gonna keep this stream to an hour. I've been doing too many 2-hour streams, so I'm gonna keep this one to an hour today. Nice, compact stream full of information. Hope you guys been enjoying this new show we have at RBN. Our channel is starting to grow once again after the YouTube suppressed us. So I feel like I'm on the right track. You know what I mean? I'm starting. Yeah, the streak is real. I told you guys I plan on keeping the streak going as long as possible. I was a little bit late today because my camera was messing up. Unless there's a tech issue, I'm going to keep doing this 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, every single night at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So make sure you guys stay tuned. Another reason why I have to do this is because I know the algorithm, and I'm very open about it, the algorithm is not promoting our streams. So I have to have a set time so you guys know where to find me. So if you enjoy these streams, make sure you check us out every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Hit the reminder because I will be here. The streak will continue. The streak is real. So if you enjoy these breakdowns, I'll be back. Make sure you guys support the Patreon. Make sure you guys support, share, like the stream and all that. So thank you guys.